Imagine boarding a flight, expecting nothing more than a peaceful journey, only to find yourself at the center of a storm you never saw coming. Olivia Bennet, a self-made billionaire and philanthropist, steps into a first-class cabin seeking respite after months of hard work. But instead of being met with the luxury and respect she deserves, she's confronted with suspicion, microaggressions, and systemic bias from those who should serve her with dignity. What begins as a quiet misunderstanding quickly escalates into a defining moment that will change the airline and the lives of its employees forever. How does Olivia turn this painful experience into a powerful call for justice and lasting reform? And what happens to the crew members who doubted her worth? Before we dive into this gripping story of resilience, transformation, and justice, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and if you've ever experienced or witnessed a moment of injustice that stayed with you. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us of the strength we all carry to make a difference. Now, let's take flight with Olivia's incredible journey. The mid-afternoon sun bathed the city in golden light as Olivia Bennet stepped out of her black town car, the sleek vehicle blending seamlessly with the bustling energy of the private airport terminal. Clad in a tailored gray trench coat over a cream blouse and understated black slacks, Olivia carried herself with an air of quiet confidence. Her choice of attire reflected her personality, elegant yet unassuming, polished without pretension. At 42, Olivia had achieved more than most could dream of. She was the founder and CEO of Novalink Technologies, a company she had built from scratch into a multi-billion-dollar powerhouse. Her philanthropic ventures had transformed the lives of thousands, particularly through her nonprofit, New Horizons, which focused on education and economic empowerment for underserved communities. Despite her wealth and influence, Olivia avoided the trappings of ostentation. She knew the world often judged her a black woman, succeeding in spaces historically dominated by white men, and she preferred to let her actions speak louder than any brand name accessory ever could. Today was supposed to be a rare moment of respite. After months of intense work launching New Horizons' largest initiative, a global scholarship fund, Olivia had carved out time to recharge. She looked forward to the flight, a few precious hours of peace and quiet before resuming her relentless schedule. As she entered the terminal, the staff greeted her with polite smiles. Olivia returned their gestures with equal warmth, though she noticed the fleeting curiosity in their eyes. She was used to it, the lingering glances, the unspoken questions. The gate agent, a young woman with a bright smile, scanned Olivia's ticket. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Bennet. Enjoy your flight." "Thank you," Olivia replied, her tone gracious. She appreciated the professionalism and noted how rare it was to encounter no hesitation or doubt in such moments. The first-class cabin of the Orion Airlines jet was a sanctuary of quiet luxury. Soft ambient lighting highlighted the cream-colored leather seats, each designed to cocoon passengers in comfort. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint aroma of leather, creating an inviting atmosphere. Olivia quickly located her window seat, 3A, and slid her small black leather tote into the overhead compartment. She took a moment to survey the space, appreciating the thoughtful details. A plush blanket neatly folded on the seat, a small bottle of water waiting on the tray, and noise-canceling headphones tucked into the armrest. As she settled in, Olivia exhaled deeply, allowing herself to relax for the first time in weeks. She retrieved a leather-bound journal from her tote and opened it to a blank page. Writing was her favorite form of reflection, a habit she had cultivated during the early days of building her company. The flight attendants moved efficiently through the cabin, assisting other passengers. Olivia noticed a tall, blonde woman in her mid-30s offering drinks to passengers in the row ahead. The woman's uniform was crisp, her demeanor professional, but her interaction seemed slightly cooler than Olivia had seen on other flights. When the flight attendant approached Olivia, her smile faltered for a split second. "Would you like a drink before takeoff, ma'am?" she asked, her tone polite but clipped. "Just water, thank you," Olivia replied, keeping her tone neutral. The attendant placed a glass on the tray table, her movements brisk. She didn't engage further, moving quickly to the next row. Olivia noticed the subtle difference in her demeanor, but chose not to dwell on it. She had learned long ago to pick her battles, and this felt too small to matter. The cabin filled as passengers continued to board, their chatter muted compared to the noisier economy sections behind the curtain. A few passengers glanced Olivia's way, their expressions unreadable. She returned her attention to her journal, jotting down notes for a new project. She had envisioned a mentorship program for young women entering the tech industry. Madison Miller, the flight attendant who had served Olivia earlier, stood at the galley near the front of the cabin, preparing for the pre-flight safety demonstration. She had worked for Orion Airlines for nearly 10 years and prided herself on delivering exceptional service, especially to first-class passengers. Yet, something about Olivia unsettled her. Madison couldn't pinpoint the exact reason, but she found herself watching Olivia more closely than the other passengers. "She doesn't look like our usual first-class passengers," Madison muttered to her colleague, Heather, as they arranged meal carts. Heather raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" Madison hesitated. "I mean, look at her. She's dressed simple, and she's just sitting there with a notebook." "It's different." Heather gave her a skeptical look. "Different doesn't mean she doesn't belong." "Be careful, Madison." Madison shrugged, but couldn't shake her feelings. She told herself she was just doing her job, ensuring that every passenger in first class had a legitimate reason to be there. But deep down, she knew her unease was rooted in assumptions she hadn't questioned. As boarding concluded, Madison approached Olivia's seat again, this time with a request. "Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass?" Olivia looked up, surprised but composed. "I already showed it at the gate." "I understand," Madison said, her tone still polite but firm. "It's just for verification." Without a word, Olivia retrieved her ticket from her tote and handed it over. Madison inspected it carefully, flipping it back and forth as if searching for an error. When she found none, she returned it, her expression guarded. "Thank you," Madison said, her voice clipped. "You're welcome," Olivia replied evenly. As the plane taxied to the runway, Olivia sensed a shift in the cabin's atmosphere. Though most passengers were engrossed in their own routines, a few occasionally glanced in her direction. Some looked curious, others indifferent. Madison continued her rounds, but Olivia noticed a subtle difference in how the flight attendant interacted with her compared to other passengers. When she refilled water glasses, she lingered longer at other seats, offering friendly small talk. When she passed Olivia, her movements were efficient but impersonal, her gaze avoiding direct contact. Olivia focused on her journal, jotting down ideas with deliberate calm. She had faced similar moments before and knew better than to let them consume her. Still, a flicker of unease lingered, a quiet reminder of the unspoken biases she had spent her life navigating. The plane reached its cruising altitude, and the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Andrew Sullivan speaking. We've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your flight." Olivia leaned back in her seat, closing her journal. The initial unease she had felt during boarding had dulled, replaced by the comfort of the spacious cabin and the promise of uninterrupted time to think. She unfolded the plush blanket on her lap, hoping to drift into a light nap. But her peace was short-lived. Madison returned to the cabin, her clipboard in hand, and approached Olivia's seat once more. "Ms. Bennett," Madison said, her tone professional but laced with a subtle edge. "We've noticed some irregularities with the passenger list, and I need to confirm your travel arrangements again." Olivia opened her eyes, her expression calm but sharp. "I've already shown you my ticket. Is there something specific you're looking for?" Madison hesitated, sensing the firmness in Olivia's voice. "It's just a routine check," she said vaguely, avoiding direct eye contact. Olivia reached into her tote and retrieved the boarding pass again, handing it over without a word. Madison studied it for a long moment, flipping it over as if expecting to find a discrepancy. "Everything seems to be in order," Madison said finally, though her tone lacked conviction. She returned the ticket and walked away, leaving Olivia with a simmering sense of frustration. The interaction had not gone unnoticed. A middle-aged black man seated across the aisle adjusted his glasses and shot Olivia a sympathetic look. His name tag, clipped to the briefcase on his lap, read Marcus Carter. Marcus leaned slightly toward Olivia and spoke in a low voice. "You handled that well. I've seen this kind of thing before." Olivia offered a small smile. "Unfortunately, so have I." Behind them, an older couple whispered to one another, their expressions wary. They exchanged glances with another passenger, a businessman in his 40s wearing a tailored suit and an expensive watch. The man shook his head slightly, murmuring something inaudible. Olivia caught fragments of their conversation. The words odd and unusual floated through the air, unspoken but understood. She turned back to her journal, determined to focus on her thoughts rather than the weight of the stares around her. But even as she wrote, the tension in the cabin was palpable, a quiet but insistent hum. In the cockpit, Captain Andrew Sullivan leaned back in his seat, scanning the flight logs. A seasoned pilot in his late 50s, Andrew had spent decades in the industry and was known for his no-nonsense approach to managing flights. Madison entered the cockpit, her expression carefully neutral. "Captain Sullivan, we might have an issue with one of the first-class passengers." Andrew raised an eyebrow. "What kind of issue?" "She's different," Madison said hesitantly. "Dressed simply. Doesn't match the usual profile of a first-class traveler. I've checked her ticket, and it's valid, but something feels off." Andrew frowned. "Off how?" "I can't explain it," Madison admitted. "I just thought you should know." Andrew sighed and stood. "Let me take a look." When the captain entered the cabin, the atmosphere shifted. Passengers straightened in their seats, and conversations hushed. Olivia noticed him approaching, but remained calm, her pen hovering over her journal. "Miss Bennett, is it?" Andrew said, his tone cool and detached. Olivia looked up, meeting his gaze. "Yes, Captain. How can I help you?" "We've had a report of some concerns regarding your presence in first class," he said bluntly. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Concerns? I'm not sure I understand." Andrew folded his arms. "Would you mind showing me your ticket?" Olivia inhaled deeply, her patience wearing thin. "This is the third time I've been asked to prove that I belong here. Is there a reason for this repeated questioning?" Andrew stiffened, his expression unreadable. "It's standard protocol to verify passenger information when concerns are raised." "And what concerns would those be?" Olivia asked, her voice steady but pointed. Andrew hesitated, clearly unprepared for her directness. "We're just ensuring that all passengers are accounted for." Olivia handed him her ticket without further comment. Andrew examined it, his eyes scanning every detail. When he found nothing amiss, he returned it with a curt nod. "Thank you for your cooperation," he said, his tone dismissive. Olivia watched him walk away, her jaw tightening. The humiliation of being singled out, again and again, was a familiar sting, but no less painful for its familiarity. The murmurs in the cabin grew louder as passengers debated the unfolding events. Marcus Carter leaned toward Olivia once more. "This is unacceptable," he said. "You shouldn't have to deal with this." "I appreciate your support," Olivia replied softly. A young woman seated a few rows back turned to her companion and whispered, "Why are they targeting her? She hasn't done anything." The older couple remained silent, their expressions a mix of discomfort and complicity. Madison returned to the galley, her nerves frayed. She knew she had crossed a line, but she couldn't admit it to herself. "I'm just doing my job," she muttered under her breath. Captain Andrew, now back in the cockpit, radioed the airline's ground staff to report a potential passenger discrepancy, framing the situation in neutral terms. As the plane continued its journey, the tension reached a boiling point. Olivia stood, her voice calm but firm as she addressed the cabin crew. "I'd like to speak with the captain," she said. Andrew emerged from the cockpit moments later, his expression annoyed. "What's the issue now?" "The issue," Olivia said evenly, "is that I've been treated like a suspect since the moment I boarded this plane. I've shown my ticket multiple times. I've followed every protocol. And yet, I'm still being questioned. Why is that?" Andrew's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I assure you we're simply following procedure." "Then perhaps your procedures need to be examined," Olivia replied. Her voice was steady, but her words carried an unmistakable weight. The cabin fell silent. Passengers watched, their expressions ranging from supportive to skeptical. "I've done nothing wrong," Olivia continued, "and I will not be made to feel like I don't belong." Andrew said nothing, his silence speaking volumes. The remainder of the flight passed in uneasy silence. Olivia stayed seated, her calm exterior masking the turbulence of emotions inside her. As the plane began its descent, she replayed the events, feeling the sting of humiliation alongside a simmering resolve. When the plane landed, the disembarking process felt longer than usual. Passengers filed out of the cabin, some casting fleeting glances at Olivia, while others avoided her gaze altogether. Marcus Carter, the businessman who had spoken up earlier, lingered near the jet bridge to speak with her. "I wanted to thank you," Marcus said, his voice quiet but firm, "for handling yourself with such dignity. Not everyone would have stayed as composed as you did." "I appreciate that," Olivia replied. "But this isn't over. People need to know this kind of behavior is unacceptable, and it won't change unless we demand better. Marquis, know that. If you need a witness or a statement, I'm more than willing to help." Olivia smiled for the first time in hours. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I might take you up on that." As she entered the terminal, her phone buzzed. Her assistant, Leah, had already seen the early signs of a public incident brewing. "Ms. Bennett, I've flagged several social media posts mentioning your name and the flight," Leah said. "Some passengers have started sharing what happened. Should I prepare a statement?" "Not yet," Olivia replied. "We'll address it, but I want to handle this strategically." She settled into the airline lounge, pulling out her laptop. Within minutes, she had drafted an email to her legal team. Her message was concise but clear. "This isn't just a personal matter. We need to investigate the systemic issues behind what happened today." By the following morning, Olivia's legal team had sprung into action. They began gathering testimonies from passengers who had been on the flight, starting with Marcus and others who had observed the crew's behavior. Marcus provided a detailed account, emphasizing the microaggressions he had witnessed. The way they kept asking for her ticket, it wasn't normal. They were looking for a reason to doubt her, even though she clearly belonged there, he said. Other passengers shared similar observations. A young woman, Emily Rogers, submitted a written statement. "It was obvious that Ms. Bennett was being treated differently. The flight attendant was polite to me and the other passengers, but when she spoke to Ms. Bennett, her tone was colder. It wasn't fair." As the statements poured in, Olivia's team began compiling a comprehensive report. They also reviewed the airline's public record and discovered a troubling pattern. Numerous complaints from minority passengers citing discrimination, many of which have been dismissed or inadequately addressed. "Looks like we've uncovered more than just one incident," Colin Reyes, Olivia's lead attorney, told her during a video call. "This could have ripple effects across the entire company." "That's the goal," Olivia replied. "This isn't just about accountability for one flight, it's about changing the culture that allowed it to happen." A week later, Olivia arrived at Orion Airlines corporate headquarters. The building was a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of the city, a testament to the company's global success. But Olivia wasn't here to admire architecture, she was here to demand accountability. Elaine Barrett, the airline CEO, greeted Olivia in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Elaine was known as a pragmatic leader, but her expression carried an edge of unease. "Ms. Bennett, thank you for bringing this to our attention," Elaine began. "I wish I didn't have to," Olivia replied. She placed a folder on the table and slid it toward Elaine. "This is a summary of what happened on Flight 428 and the broader patterns we've identified in your company's treatment of minority passengers." Elaine opened the folder, her expression growing more serious as she skimmed the contents. "This is troubling," she admitted. "But these are isolated incidents." "With respect, Ms. Barrett, they're not," Olivia interrupted. "Your own records show a pattern of complaints, many of which were ignored. This isn't about a few bad apples. It's about a system that needs reform." Elaine exhaled, leaning back in her chair. "What are you proposing?" Olivia outlined her demands. 1. Mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all employees, from flight attendants to senior leadership. 2. A transparent complaint process, ensuring that every passenger grievance is investigated thoroughly. 3. Diverse hiring practices, to reflect the airline's global customer base. 4. Regular cultural sensitivity assessments to monitor progress and address ongoing issues. Elaine listened intently, though her expression betrayed skepticism. "These changes will take time," she said. "I'm not asking for overnight results," Olivia replied, "but I am asking for commitment. If you're willing to implement these reforms, I'll work with you to ensure they succeed. If not, I'm prepared to escalate this to the public." Elaine's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "I'll take this to the board." Despite Olivia's efforts to handle the matter discreetly, word of the incident leaked to the press. Social media erupted with hashtags like equality in the skies and flyfair, as passengers shared their own stories of discrimination. News outlets picked up the story, framing Olivia as a powerful figure taking on systemic injustice. While many praised her courage, others criticized her as overreacting or playing the race card. Olivia ignored the noise, focusing instead on the work at hand. Her team accelerated the investigation, compiling a damning report to present to the airline's board. Elaine, feeling the pressure, called Olivia for an update. "The board is reviewing your proposals," she said, "but we'll need concrete data to justify the costs." "You'll have it," Olivia assured her. Behind the scenes, she worked tirelessly, coordinating with her legal team and speaking directly to passengers who had come forward. Each story added weight to her case, painting a vivid picture of the systemic issues at play. Weeks after her meeting with CEO Elaine Barrett, Olivia was summoned to a board meeting at Orion Airlines. The company's executives had reviewed her demands, but their decision was far from unanimous. The boardroom was sleek and modern, with a long glass table and digital screens displaying company metrics. Elaine opened the meeting, her expression measured. "Ms. Bennett, thank you for joining us. We've reviewed your proposals and would like to discuss how we can move forward." Olivia nodded, sensing the undercurrent of resistance in the room. "I'm here to listen, but I'm also here to ensure that meaningful change happens." The chief operating officer, a stern man named Richard Cole, spoke next. "Ms. Bennett, we appreciate your concerns, but implementing your proposals would be disruptive and costly. For example, mandatory diversity training for all staff could pull employees from critical operations." Olivia held his gaze. Disruption is often necessary for progress. And let's not forget that failing to address these issues has its own costs: damaged reputation, lost customers, and potential lawsuits. Another board member, a woman in her 60s, chimed in. "What guarantees do we have that these measures will work? The airline industry is fast-paced and cultural change takes time." "True change takes commitment," Olivia replied. "But I've seen it happen before. With the right systems and accountability, you can transform not just your company, but your industry." Elaine interjected. "We're prepared to move forward with parts of your plan, including an improved complaint process and optional diversity training. However, some of your more ambitious proposals will need to be scaled back." Olivia leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "Optional training isn't enough. Bias doesn't disappear on its own, it requires deliberate effort. If you're serious about fixing this, you need to commit fully." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Marcus Carter, who had joined as a guest speaker to support Olivia's case, shared his perspective. "I was on that flight," he said. "I saw what happened, and I've seen it happen before. If Orion Airlines doesn't address this head-on, you'll lose customers like me and others who value fairness and respect." The weight of his words lingered in the room. Finally, Elaine nodded. "Let's vote," she said. The board agreed to move forward with Olivia's full proposal, though some members did so reluctantly. As the meeting ended, Olivia felt a mix of relief and determination. The hardest part was still ahead, turning promises into action. The first wave of mandatory diversity and inclusion training sessions launched across Orion Airlines. Olivia personally reviewed the curriculum, ensuring it included real-world scenarios that challenged employees to confront their biases. Madison Miller attended the first session, feeling a mix of apprehension and guilt. Since the flight, she had replayed her actions countless times, recognizing her mistakes, but unsure how to make amends. During one exercise, participants were asked to role-play as passengers experiencing microaggressions. Madison found herself in the role of a passenger, listening to an attendant dismiss her concerns. The experience was eye-opening. "I didn't realize how much those little moments add up," she admitted during the group discussion. "It's not just about what you say, it's how you make someone feel." Across the room, Captain Andrew Sullivan sat with his arms crossed, his skepticism evident. When asked to share his thoughts, he hesitated. "I've been flying for over 20 years, he said. "I treat everyone equally. I don't see how this applies to me." The trainer, a woman with decades of experience in conflict resolution, responded gently but firmly. "Captain Sullivan, equality doesn't mean ignoring differences. It means recognizing and addressing the unique challenges some people face. This training isn't about blaming, it's about learning." Over time, even Andrew began to engage. During a session focused on empathy, he listened to a colleague share a story about being judged based on appearance. For the first time, Andrew began to see the parallels between their experiences and what Olivia had endured. As the internal reforms gained momentum, Orion Airlines prepared to issue a public statement. Olivia collaborated with the communications team, ensuring the message reflected transparency and accountability. The statement read, "At Orion Airlines, we are committed to creating an inclusive environment for all passengers and employees. Recent events have highlighted areas where we must do better. We have implemented mandatory diversity training, improved our complaint system, and are actively working to ensure every individual is treated with respect and dignity." The statement was met with mixed reactions. Many applauded the airline for taking responsibility, while others criticized the move as performative. Olivia knew this was only the beginning. During a press conference, a reporter asked her, "Ms. Bennett, do you think these changes will make a lasting impact?" Olivia's response was measured. "Change doesn't happen overnight, but I believe in the power of consistent effort. If Orion Airlines stays committed to these reforms, they can set a new standard for the industry." Madison and Andrew watched the press conference from the employee lounge. For Madison, it was a moment of reflection and opportunity to see how her actions had triggered something much larger than herself. For Andrew, it was a reminder that leadership meant owning up to one's mistakes and striving to do better. The weeks following the press conference were a whirlwind of activity for Orion Airlines. Mandatory diversity training sessions rolled out nationwide, and the revamped complaint system went live. The airline also began conducting town halls to gather employee feedback on the reforms. Madison Miller threw herself into the process. Once reluctant, she now saw the changes as an opportunity to grow. During a training session, she stood up to share her thoughts. "I'm not proud of how I handled myself on Flight 428, she said, her voice steady but emotional. "I let my assumptions guide my actions, and I hurt someone because of it. This training has taught me that it's never too late to learn and do better." Her words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement. Many employees, inspired by Madison's vulnerability, began to reflect on their own behaviors. Meanwhile, Captain Andrew Sullivan continued to grapple with his role in the incident. Though he initially resisted the training, he began to engage more deeply as the sessions progressed. During a role-playing exercise, Andrew was asked to step into the shoes of a passenger who felt ignored by a flight attendant. The experience was uncomfortable but eye-opening. "I didn't realize how isolating it could feel," he admitted afterward. "I've always thought of myself as someone who treats people equally, but I see now that I've missed opportunities to make passengers feel valued." Despite these personal breakthroughs, not everyone embraced the changes. A small group of employees voiced concerns about the scope of the reforms, claiming they were unnecessary or disruptive. Olivia addressed these concerns head-on during a company-wide video conference. "Change is never easy," she said, "but it's necessary. These reforms aren't about assigning blame, they're about creating a culture where everyone feels respected and valued. If we succeed, Orion Airlines will not only become a better company, but a model for the entire industry." The revamped complaint system quickly became a cornerstone of Orion Airlines' transformation. Passengers could now submit feedback through the airline's app or website, with every complaint routed to a dedicated team trained in handling sensitive issues. Olivia monitored the system closely. Early reports showed a significant increase in the number of complaints filed, but instead of viewing this as a problem, Olivia saw it as a sign of progress. This means people trust the system enough to use it, she told Elaine Barrett during a meeting. The next step is making sure we respond effectively. One case that caught Olivia's attention involved a young Asian American woman who reported being ignored by flight attendants during her flight. The woman, Mia Park, detailed how she had repeatedly requested assistance but was overlooked in favor of other passengers. The complaint team investigated thoroughly, interviewing the crew and reviewing CCTV footage. The findings confirmed Mia's account, and the airline issued a formal apology, along with a commitment to improve crew training on unconscious bias. When Mia received the response, she posted about it on social media, praising the airline for taking her concerns seriously. "It feels good to be heard," she wrote. "I hope this encourages others to speak up too." The post went viral, with many applauding Orion Airlines for its transparency and accountability. Olivia saw it as a small but meaningful victory. As part of the reforms, Orion Airlines launched a leadership development program aimed at fostering a more inclusive culture. Employees who demonstrated empathy, fairness, and a commitment to diversity were invited to participate. Madison, to her surprise, was selected as one of the program's inaugural members. Though she initially doubted her qualifications, her supervisor encouraged her to embrace the opportunity. "Your growth over the past few months has been remarkable," the supervisor said. "You've shown that real change is possible, and that's what we need in our leaders." The program included workshops, mentoring sessions, and collaborative projects. One exercise required participants to develop a proposal for improving the passenger experience. Madison worked with a team to design a training module focused on cultural humility, a concept that resonated deeply with her own journey. Captain Andrew Sullivan, who had also been invited to the program, found himself reflecting on his career in a new light. For years, he had prioritized technical excellence over interpersonal skills, believing the latter was secondary. But the program challenged him to rethink his approach. During a mentoring session, Andrew admitted, "I've spent so much time focusing on flying the plane that I forgot about the people in it. That's something I need to change." The program culminated in a leadership summit, where participants presented their projects to senior executives. Madison and Andrew's presentations received praise, not just for their ideas, but for their authenticity and willingness to grow. Months after the reforms began, Olivia sat in a conference room reviewing the latest data with the leadership team at Orion Airlines. The results were promising. Customer satisfaction scores increased by 25%, with minority passengers reporting significantly improved experiences. Complaint response time reduced by 40%, thanks to the streamlined process Olivia had championed. Employee feedback surveys showed a noticeable shift in workplace culture, with 87% of employees expressing support for the reforms. Elaine Barrett, the CEO, looked up from the report and smiled. "It's rare to see this kind of change happen so quickly. You've set a high bar, Olivia." "This is just the beginning," Olivia replied. "Sustaining this progress will take continued effort, but the foundation is strong." Elaine nodded. "We're committed to keeping this momentum, and we owe much of it to your leadership." The board voted to expand the reforms, integrating them into the airline's long-term strategy. Olivia felt a deep sense of accomplishment. What began as a painful experience had become a transformative movement, not just for Orion Airlines, but for the broader industry. Madison Miller, once a reluctant participant in the reforms, had become one of their most vocal advocates. She often spoke at training sessions, sharing her story as an example of the power of self-reflection and growth. During a company event celebrating the one-year anniversary of the reforms, Madison approached Olivia. "I owe you a lot," Madison said. "Not just for what you've done for the airline, but for what you've taught me personally. I've learned to see people in a way I never did before." Olivia smiled warmly. "You've earned every bit of progress you've made, Madison. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and even more courage to change." Captain Andrew Sullivan had undergone his own transformation. While his initial resistance to the training had been strong, he now embraced the changes. He volunteered to mentor younger pilots, emphasizing the importance of treating passengers with dignity. One day, he requested a private meeting with Olivia, When they met, he spoke candidly. "I've been flying for over 20 years," Andrew began. "And for most of that time, I thought my job was just to get people from point A to point B. But this experience has shown me that there's more to it than that. I'm sorry for how I treated you, and I hope I can do better moving forward." Olivia extended her hand. "Apology accepted, Andrew. Growth is what matters most." As the reform solidified, Orion Airlines began earning recognition as a leader in diversity and inclusion. The airline's approach was highlighted at industry conferences, and other companies sought Olivia's advice on implementing similar initiatives. One evening, Olivia attended an awards gala where Orion Airlines was being honored for its transformation. As she watched Elaine accept the award on behalf of the company, Olivia felt a quiet sense of pride. Elaine's speech acknowledged the role Olivia had played. "Change isn't easy, but it's necessary," Elaine said. "Thanks to Olivia Bennett's leadership, Orion Airlines has become a better place for both passengers and employees. We're honored to set a new standard for the industry." Later that evening, Olivia reflected on the journey. She thought of the countless hours spent advocating for change, the resistance she had faced, and the lives that had been touched by the reforms. This wasn't just a professional victory, it was a personal one. Olivia had turned pain into purpose, creating a legacy that would endure far beyond her lifetime. On a crisp autumn morning, Olivia boarded another Orion Airlines flight. This time, she was greeted with warmth and professionalism by the crew. As she settled into her seat, she noticed a young flight attendant assisting an elderly passenger with genuine care. The cabin felt different, more inclusive, more respectful. Olivia smiled, knowing that the changes she had fought for were taking root. As the plane ascended, she looked out the window at the endless sky. Her heart swelled with gratitude and hope. This flight, like her journey, was one worth taking. On a crisp autumn morning, Olivia boarded another Orion Airlines flight. This time, she was greeted with warmth and professionalism by the crew. As she settled into her seat, she noticed a young flight attendant assisting an elderly passenger with genuine care. The cabin felt different, more inclusive, more respectful. Olivia smiled, knowing that the changes she had fought for were taking root. As the plane ascended, she looked out the window at the endless sky. Her heart swelled with gratitude and hope. This flight, like her journey, was one worth taking. If you've been moved by Olivia's journey of resilience and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Join us for more stories that celebrate perseverance, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right. Together, we can spread positivity and inspire change in the world, one story at a time. Click subscribe now, and let's continue to create a brighter, fairer future one story at a time.